Hello and welcome to the Accounting Cycle Practice Set. Today we will be covering Practice Set Part D. The Practice Set Part D continues with the same worksheet that we started in Part A. We then added to it in Part B and again in Part C. In Part D, we are going to prepare the closing entries on General Journal, page 3. We'll be using T accounts to calculate the balance and income summary in the capital accounts. We'll then post the closing entries to the general ledger and calculate the new general ledger balances. Then we will prepare a post-closing trial balance. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So here's the instructions. So here is Practice Set Part D, the final submission, and here are the 3 steps. So we have number 12, which is to prepare the closing entries on General Journal, page 3. And to also calculate out the balances in the income summary and capital account. And then also 13, post the closing entries to the general ledger. Use account 600 for income summary and calculate out the new general ledger balances. And then we will post them in the general ledger and prepare our post-closing trial balance. Okay, so let's go here. This is our Excel worksheet. So we'll start with the page for the closing entries. So the first thing we have to do is realize when we close our accounts, we only close temporary accounts. So our permanent accounts are asset liabilities and owner's capital. Those stay open all the time. We're not going to close those. We're only going to close our temporary accounts. So let's go to our worksheet, and we're going to see on our adjusted trial balance, these are our ending balances. Okay, so the cash, accounts receivable, supplies, accounts payable, wages payable, and the capital account, those are all permanent accounts. The only accounts that we are going to be closing are these below the capital. So it's the drawing account, service revenue, and then the 3 expenses. Okay, so let's go to here. Now, closing entries are always performed on the last day of the month, so that would be August the 31st. The first step is always to close revenue to income summary. So let's go ahead and go back to our worksheet and let's look at our revenue account. We have revenue of $6,000. Okay, and it's on the credit side. We only have one revenue account. So in order to close this account, I have to debit it. So let's go to page 3. And we're going to debit our service revenue for $6,000. And I'm going to credit income summary. Okay, and this, my explanation is to close revenue accounts. Okay, so my next entry is going to be to close my expense accounts. So if I look here at my adjusted trial balance, I have 3 expense accounts: rent, wages, and supplies. They all have debit balances, so that means that I need to credit them. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. Oops, sorry. I'm going to come over here. And so since I am crediting my expenses, I have to debit income summary. So I'm going to debit income summary. I'm going to leave that blank for a moment. And so my first expense is rent expense. And I'm going to credit that for $225. My next one is wages expense, and that is for $450. And then the last one is supplies expense. The reason I put them here first is so that then I know the amount, so I can then add them together. When I add those 3, I get $725. And this is to close expense accounts. All right, my next entry, so step number 1, close revenue to income summary. Step number 2 is to close expenses to income summary. Next step is to calculate the balance in income summary and close it to the capital account. All right, so here is our T accounts. All right, so first we have in our income summary account, we have a credit. So I'm going to post $6,000 as my credit. Then I have a debit here of $725. And that is going to give me a balance of $5,275, and it's on the credit side. Okay, so this is my balance. This is entry 1. This is entry 2. Okay, so now I need to close income summary to capital. So it's got a credit balance, so that means I need to debit it in order to close it. So I'm going to do income summary. And I'm going to debit it for $5,275, and I am going to credit G. Spencer Capital, and that's when I'm going to credit $5,275, and my explanation is to close income to capital. Perfect. So now I have to post this entry, or put it in the T account below so I can calculate my balance out. Okay, so I have a debit. That's my entry number 3. And now my balance is a 0 balance. It's closed, gone, goodbye, we're good. Okay, so now I want to calculate out my balance of my capital account. So how I'm going to do that, I'm going to go to the worksheet. I have a capital balance in my adjusted trial balance of $3,000. Let me go back to my, so I have a credit balance of $3,000. In my journal entry here, I credited the capital account for $5,275, and we're just going to put that on hold here for a moment, because our last entry, our 4th closing entry, is to close owner's draws to capital. So let's look at our worksheet and our adjusted trial balance, and our drawing account is a debit for $800. So I need to credit the drawing account for $800. So I'm going to debit my capital account. So it's G. Spencer Capital, and that's $800 on as a debit, right? Because I've got to credit my G. Spencer drawing account to close that out. Okay, so now that one is closed. So what I'm going to do now is I have to do my explanation to close owners draws to capital. Okay, so now I need to post this to my little T account. So I have $800. So I'm going to equal this plus this minus that. and my balance in my capital account's $5,725. Okay. So next I need to post each of these entries to my general ledger. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is post my debit to service revenue. So I'm going to go to my general ledger and I'm going to find my service revenue. Oops. It happened on the 31st. It's a closing entry, so I'm going to do J3. And it is a debit of $6,000. And that gives me a balance of 0 in that account. This is account 401, so let's go back here and post that. Next, I have to post the $6,000 as a credit to income summary. So I'm going to go to my income summary and put August 31. It's coming from J3. It is a credit for $6,000. $6,000. Perfect. This is account 600, so I'm going to come back here. I'm going to put 600. Excellent. All right, so now I'm going to post my next entry. So this is closing the expenses. So my first line is a debit of $725 to income summary. So same date, 31. It's J3. And my debit is $725. And that's going to give me $5,275 as my balance. It's account 600, so I'm going to go back and put my account 600. All right, next I have my rent expense. So this is going to be the 31st. It's J3. I'm going to credit this for $225, so I have a 0 balance. That's account 501. Oops. So I'm going to do 501. Next I have my wages expense. So I'll go over here. And I'm going to do the 31st again. J3. 450, that gives me a 0 balance. This is account 502. Do 502. Next is supplies. So I will go back to my general ledger. 31. J3. Credit for 50. Now I have a 0. This is account 503. And that one is closed. Okay, so next I have to post this entry to income summary. So let's go to 600. Oops. It comes from J3. And that is $5,275 on the debit, and that gives me a 0 in this account. This is account 600. I'll put 600. Now I need to post this, a credit to this capital account for $5,275. I'm going to find my capital account. 31. J3. And that is going to be a credit of $5,275, and that gives me $8,275 as my balance. This is account 301, and I'm going to do 301. That account is now closed. My final entry I have to post, and this is a debit to capital for $800. 31. J3. 800, and that's going to give me a balance of $7,475 in that account. This account 301. So now I'm going to post that. And the last is the drawing account. It's a credit for $800. So we have 31. J3. Credit for 800 gives us 0. And this is account 302. So I'm going to go back to account 302. All right, so now we have not only, so let's go back to, so not only have we prepared our closing entries, which we did, we used the T account to calculate the balances, so it helped us to close those accounts. We posted the entries to the general ledger, and we calculated the new balances. So the last thing we need to do is the post-closing trial balance. So now if we look in our general ledger, okay, all of our temporary accounts, which are at the bottom, all have zero balances, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, at the capital account, it ends for $7,475. So what we need to do is go ahead and we're going to use these balances and post them to our post-closing trial balance. So here's our post-closing trial balance. I'm going to do Gloria's cleaning service post-closing trial balance on August 31, 2020. All right, so I'm going to post the names of our accounts. So we would get that from either the general ledger, going down here, or from the worksheet. If I get them from the worksheet though, I have to stop at capital because none of the temporary accounts exist after we close the accounts. So the first one is cash, then accounts receivable, next is supplies, next is accounts payable, next is wages payable, and then we have Gloria Spencer, so G Spencer Capital. Okay, so let's go to the general ledger, and our balance in cash is $5,025. It's a debit, and there we go. Next, accounts receivable is $2,750, and that is also a debit. Okay, next is supplies, and we have a balance of $25, also on the debit. Next, we have accounts payable. We have a credit of $75. Oops. Then we have our wages payable for $250, and that's also a credit. And then we have G Spencer, $7,475. Okay, so now I'm going to sum, make sure, okay, I'm going to make sure that this is in proper form, and then I need this, I'm going to put total. All right, now my post-closing trial balance is complete, and I have now completed all the steps in the practice set. I did 12, 13, and 14 in this, and now it's entirely complete. So we have our post-closing trial balance, we have our closing entries, and our general ledger is all closed. I hope that made sense, and I hope you find these videos helpful.